Okay, perfect. I think our meeting is now being recorded, so we'll get started. Well, welcome everyone. It's really nice to have several people attending the chat, and I've been trying different days and times, and it seems like Thursday Thursday at 1 just might be the time. So, welcome all of you again. Today we're going to be talking about annual reports. Reasons why writing an annual report may make good sense for your library, who the intended audiences for your annual report may be, and what to include in your report, and a variety of ways you can share your report with others. And during our discussions, we are going to be looking at several different examples from libraries around the country. Okay. So as you can see from the list on the slide, there are several good reasons for writing an annual report. It can serve as a tool to inform and educate community members about your library's programs, any initiatives your library may be taking on, and the services that you provide. And your annual report can also be a vehicle for accountability, which is increasingly important. By providing community members and decision makers with information on how you can or how you are judiciously spending library funds. Your annual report can and should include stories that demonstrate your library's positive impact and value. It's increasingly important to keep your library firmly in the community members' minds, so keeping it front and center. So your annual report should highlight all of your major accomplishments and, again, any new services or staff that you have added during the past year. So there's a lot of things to include in your annual report, but also the process of writing an annual report is a really good one because it provides an opportunity for you to review yearly statistics, accomplishments, and challenges that your library has been experiencing. And comparing data from previous years can help you identify any positive or negative trends that are taking place in your library and in your community. Again, it's a great process, but it should also be a collaborative process. So you might want to gather staff together and solicit stories from them to include in your annual report, photos, they may have suggestions on patron profiles or the things that really should be highlighted in the report. And that gives them a sense of ownership in the annual report as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'll be doing this a couple times throughout the webinar. So just go ahead and let me know in the chat box if you can see the screen. Okay, you guys all disappeared, and now all I can see is my screen. So great, very good. I can see your chat. Very good. So we're going to look at three different annual reports, and they are all simple reports that are kind of examples of simple reports that can be done. So the first one is from Abington Public Library, and you'll see it starts out, there's no graphics on this annual report. It's really, oh, hi, I can see Rachel. It's really just a it's like a 3-page document. It's all text-based. It's something that's available from their website. It has the highlights, and then there's a message. It starts with the message from, let me scroll back up here again. It starts with a message to the inhabitants of the town, and then it kind of talks about various things that happen in the library, and then at the end you'll see that there's some statistics that they've included. So very simple example. The second one is from Burnaby Public Library, and you'll see again it's primarily text, but it has a lot more visual interest. This is it's only a 2-page annual report. Again, we have a message from the chairman. It looks like we have the library board kind of front and center here. And then they kind of have their highlights. What I really like about this example is that throughout the this annual report, they've included this impact flow statement. for several different activities that took place in their library. So they talk about summer reading, and then they talk about the impact. They talk about their public libraries, which is really, I think it's a fabulous idea. It looks like just from reading this annual report, I can see that community engagement is very important to them. So they talk about the pop-up libraries and the positive impact that it has. Also, they conducted a survey, and they had groups of people going out and talking to people out on the street. And again, you talk about their impact. We include their photo of this. Um, I think the photo is quite interesting because the one person looks um, they're not smiling. They look very serious. And then we have financial highlights. Their donors. They had one of their staff people passed away, and they talked about an impact of a studio for creative expression that they set at the library. So again, a very simple example, but I think the impact statements and also the visual things are really positive. Okay, the third one is from Champaign. And as we go on, I just want to state that all three of these libraries obviously included their annual report. They made it available on the web, which is, I think, a terrific idea. In Champaign, you can see here that they have their annual report. They have a web page dedicated to them, but they go back all the way to 2005. So just by simply going through these, you can really get a sense of the history and the progress, the various initiatives that have happened in this library. What I really particularly like about Champaign is on that web page, they've also included a little calculator. They have their list of the board members, but they pulled out what they value. And so their annual report has a theme, which is Our Library Speaks Volumes. And then they have this little subtitle, What We Value and Who We Want to Be. And then they pulled out each of these 4 value statements. So you can click on these and go directly to those value statements. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll go look at the PDF. But before I do, please note that down below here, they've also pulled out their financial statement. So it's a separate link. You can go directly to that. They have the Foundation and Friends and the Library Donors. So let's look at the PDF. Beautifully, a great graphic, really well done. This annual report, you see it's 5 pages. And then the value statements are just really large font, front and center. And it's, I think it's very effective the way that they did. They include the statistical information as well, but you really get an idea of what's important to them. So they've included like how many visitors, how many items were checked out, but it's in a way where you get the information and it's much more interesting. I think it's much more impactful as well. Great photograph. Okay, but you'll notice that that financial statement isn't here. So this is the annual report. This part here could be shared out primarily with the public, but the financial information, I'm sure that could be sent out in a way that's just interest to decision makers, to the donors. So they didn't include all the information in the same. Okay, I'm going to go back. Stop sharing here. So we talked about why why you want to write an annual report, because you might be having to meet a reporting requirement. It provides you an opportunity to provide a summary of your yearly activity, accountability. You can inform and educate the public. It's a terrific marketing tool. And it also, again, it provides a historical record. So now we're going to go on to who is your audience? So, you know, when I was looking at the information about annual reports, one of the things that kind of continued to come up was like, before you begin writing your annual report, it's really helpful to have a firm idea of who your primary audience is going to be, because this really helps you decide what to include and highlight in your annual report. Ideally, your annual report is going to be read by a wide variety of people, hopefully all of the people on this list, and maybe a lot of others that I didn't even think to include. But primarily, your annual report is going to be read by the people who have direct influence on your library's policies and budget because they want to know what you're doing and how well you're doing it and how effective you are and what the impact is that you're having. So you will really want to keep those folks informed of all the wonderful things currently happening in your library, as well as any future projects that you have on the horizon. So looking at this list, if you want to go ahead and enter into the chat box, any other groups or people who may be in that primary audience. And by primary audience, again, I'm talking about those people who have an influence over your library's policies and budget. And if you don't want to end it in the chat, if you want to just tell me, if you have headphones or the microphone and you just want to share, I'm happy to hear it because I'm sure I'm missing people. For instance, I haven't included the Friends of the Library or city or borough department. What about other departments, like in your city? They might be interested in what you're doing. Anybody have any idea? Any other audience members I could?
I think that if you're partnering with different agencies for providing programs, to provide that information to them.
Exactly. So if you're partnering with the United Way or with some other nonprofit, you definitely would want to let them know and give them some credit. Okay, so again, what you include in your annual report really depends on who your primary audience is. So it's an annual report, so you will want to identify the time period that your report covers. You'll want to include a personal message from the library director, or it could be maybe from your board president, reflecting on your past year's accomplishments. It's probably a very good idea to include how your library met your organizational mission, goals, and objectives. I think it's probably be a very good idea to include some profiles of community members using your services, because when people and include their own words and descriptions, and have them express in their own words how useful they found the services. I think it's important, those real words from real users. So you want to have photos of them and include their comments. You might list any key achievements. And again, it doesn't always have to be just text. You might want to include some video content. If you maybe you want to refer to a web page that describes a project that you were involved in. Every claim that you make about an impact that you had in the community, you would want to be sure that you back that up with some evidence. And again, any financial information that you include, it doesn't have to just be statistics or just the numerals. You could include some pie charts to present financial and budget information. And again, as Rachel mentioned, partnerships, major donors, volunteers, people who played a major role, it's important to highlight their contribution. So some other things to keep in mind is you probably want to keep it simple and avoid library jargon and minutia. Limit the background information, all those administrative details that we find so interesting, but the general public would probably be bored to tears. And then you might want to just not focus on any failures. You want to keep the focus on all the positive things that happened in your library. You want to keep it upbeat and optimistic and focus on your successes. You would never include any confidential, sensitive, or personnel issues, because it's going to be a document that's going to be shared widely and broadly, and you don't want that kind of information to get out there. Some of the more interesting annual reports that I'm going to be sharing with you have used a theme and they often have a secondary title, such as the one on the screen. It has the year 2013, 2014 annual report, and then its progress with partners. And we'll be looking at this one in just a second. So I think that's a really good idea to have that theme for your annual report. So consider creating an idea folder and putting like event brochures, notes from appreciative patrons, newsletters, any photos, just that kind of stuff that kind of be gathering it throughout the year. And then when you bring it out and use it during that period of time when you're actually creating your annual report. So let's go ahead and look at this one from Bradford. Let's go down to it. We have kind of obviously a library cat kind of there. So this again is an 8-page annual report, and we have this nice message from the chairman here. We're talking about plans for early literacy center, the team. They have an interview with their new executive director. And then we have lots of programming that takes place. And there's a volunteer who's retiring after a very long period of service. And so here we have some financial information. You'll see that they include some pie charts, really colorful and make it easy to just pull out the details, visually interesting and much more accessible to the public. And that's it, I think. There's not too much more. Here's their website, and you can see that they have their annual reports listed for several years. And actually, it's really interesting to look at them because this is one of their earlier ones. This is from 2011. And this is the theme that they used for this one was building the future. And throughout this annual report, we have the building theme, building the staff, building the facilities, building technology. And so it's a text. I don't think there's any photographs in here. It's text, and it's, kind of that building theme runs all the way through it. Pretty effective, I think. Okay. Okay, do you have any questions so far of what we've talked about before we go on? Okay. I'm not sure why there we go. Okay, so how to share your annual report? Well, there's different ways. The ones that you've been primarily looking at have either been a saved Word document or a saved PDF. Some of them have been web-based. All of them have had a web page where they pulled out different sections. Either they had the annual report listed by year, or such as the one that we looked at earlier where they kind of pulled out the Champaign one, where they pulled out sections of the annual report for you to look at. You could look at their values, or you could look at their financial statements, or who their donors have been for, etc. But I think it's important to really include graphics. If you can use videos, that'd be awesome. We have the example of an interactive calculator. I just think the attention span of your users changing, and the way that people want information is changing. So I think the really heavy text-based annual reports, I think you're going to spend a lot of time on that, and maybe a fewer number of people will read it, just because it won't be so visually appealing. So again, you probably want to include graphics, photos, things like that. Have your data, but kind of marry it with some interesting design elements. such as we saw with the Champaign one, which had the value statements, and they included number of visitors, number of circulations. Make it fun. Make it. It doesn't have to be a staid annual report. It can have some fun. And we're going to be looking at this one here by the Hartford County Public Library, which took the theme of a superhero comic book and really made an incredibly visually interesting annual report that just draws you in, and you just want to go through all of it. And it's a very long one, actually. But it's done in such a way that it just intrigues you, and so it just really pulls you in. It's really important to make it available online, so you can share it from your webpage, you can share it on social media, have it accessible so you can go back to it. I just think you definitely want to go paperless if possible and create a webpage for your annual report. Add a new link each year, and it's a nice way to look at the progress of your library. And be bold and be different. Some of the more interesting ones do that. So let's look at this one from Hartford. Okay. So here is their web page. We're going to scroll down, and they have their annual report. And then they list ones back from 2009, and it looks like all of them had a theme associated with them. We're going to be looking at this one from 2015. Oops. Okay. Hopefully all of you are still following me. So they kind of did an electronic or e-magazine, and they created this annual report that is somewhat interactive. I think I've come back to it several different times because I just think that it's particularly well done the way that they did this. I think there's like 40 there's 40 pages to this thing, but it really does just kind of draw you in. They use lots of graphics, lots of photos. They've kind of stylized some of the photos, and I believe they probably used some online e-magazine software programs such as ZooMag, and I'll provide a link in our chat box and you guys could go there. They have a free, kind of a free level of service that you can create an e-magazine with, and then they have some other ones that you actually have to pay with. So this is probably a bigger library system than most of us have experience with, but I don't think you have to be a big library service to create a very visually appealing kind of annual report. So we're looking at the eMag version of it, but they also have a PDF that we can also look at. So we'll go to the PDF. Oh, you guys probably can't follow me there, so I won't do that. Sorry, I just lost you. I forgot about that. If I didn't have it open, then when I share my screen, you guys won't be able to see it. So I want to scroll down, go kind of to the end here, where they have their financial information. Should be coming out pretty soon here. Sorry about that. Here we go. So again, they've kind of used lots of colorful pie charts to provide their financial information. So again, it's more visually appealing. And then we have this, statement of activities from the foundation. Friends could do something similar. Okay. So what do they highlight in this, in their annual report? 40 pages. Wow, that's a lot. They highlight their innovation lab, their summer reading program, and the partnership with Walmart. They talk about a new building, a plan that they have, their major fundraising efforts, their strategic plan. They have lots of information about their program, an award that the library received, the services that they provide. They talk about their staff contributions, and then they talk about their community collaboration, their various partners, and they provide financial information and statistics. Okay? So they had a lot of fun with their annual report. I think it's probably, out of the ones that I've been looking at as I prepared for this workshop, probably one of the most interesting and clever. And it's certainly something that all of you could do. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Go ahead and put that so JUMAG is a free, well, they're not all free, but they do have a free, some free portion of the services are free. And they can help you to create a professional looking digital magazine. They have a creation tool that allows you to create this e-magazine. You can do it. You can create a magazine from a PDF, or you can use some of the templates that they provide. So the other way that you can share your annual report is with by doing some like a slideshow, and that's how Kickstarter. There's an example from Kickstarter that I'm going to go ahead and share with you real quick. So Kickstarter, it's just basically like a PowerPoint slideshow, and so you can just kind of move through it, and then they've embedded some video content. So if you wanted to create something different, a different way of sharing your information, you could do it this way. And so then you can see that they have these different projects that they're highlighting, and they've just embedded some different videos. So think about how you could do that with your summer library program or some other program that you have at your library, or an interview with a profile with a patron talking about the services that they received and how it changed with their experience. So this is an easy way to provide a very interesting and compelling annual report. You could have videos from programs, profiles, interviews, and kind of marry it in the slideshow with other, like, more statistical information. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you guys. I will, on my PowerPoint, when I share it with everybody, I will have some resources that you can look at. Is an annual report in your library's future by Kristen Cheney is really, really great. This is a shorter article, but it provides some really interesting ways that you can add information or make your annual report more interactive. But does anybody have any questions, or are any of you guys creating annual reports now? And if so, what kind of information are you including? Okay, Rachel has shared information about comic book idea. I know of an app that can do that for your photos. Okay, thank you, Rachel. So are any of you planning or working on an annual report right now, or do you have one in mind for the future?
I think that this will be something that I put together in Kaufman Cove, especially because we're a really small rural library, and city council sometimes is a fan and sometimes isn't a fan of the library. So I think it would be really a nice way to wrap up all of the programs that we've been offering so that we have good support going forward.
I've kind of created an annual report. Oh, can you hear me?
Can you say that again?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Spoke?
It's Rachel Nash. Anyway, in the past we've kind of created a mini report just with our accomplishments and which goals we fulfilled. And this year, the city managers asked me to prepare a presentation for City Council. It keeps getting pushed back, but it's basically when they need good news, when they need something good to share with the council, which I think is kind of neat that they see the library as a good news organization. So.
Perfect. And both of you bring up two very good reasons to create your annual report. One is to remind everyone of all the good work that you're doing, because as Rachel said, sometimes the library, the city council is a fan of the library and sometimes not so much. And also, it's a great tool for the city council to share with the rest of the community about all of the positive impact that communities or members are receiving from their library. So it's a nice tool for them also when you're doing well. And I know you are doing well, Rachel, so terrific. So Beth, how about you? Do you have plans, Beth or Bree or Kimberly? Plans for creating an annual report in the future? Okay, Bree, I can see your chat, yes? Oh, you don't have a mic. Okay. And you said earlier, this is from Bree. This is a great visual for me. I'll implement in other reports as well as the annual report. So it sounds like you will be working on an annual report. Okay. And Kimberly or Beth? Okay. All right. Well, they're being quiet today, and that's quite all right. Sometimes we want to be quiet. That's okay. Well, that was all that I had to share, you guys. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you did receive some positive information from this. We will be sharing the recording from our website, and hopefully, if you want any of those URLs to the specific annual reports that I shared, I'll be happy to share those with you as well. Okay. Any other questions before we go? All right. Well, thank you, and you guys all have a great day. Have a wonderful holiday, and thank you for attending.
Thanks, Julie.
All right. Bye-bye, Rachel. And bye, Rachel Nash as well. Have a great day, Kimberly, Bree, and Beth.